Welcome along to Fujitsu World Tour. The theme of this year's event is driving a trusted future. The rapid evolution of new technologies, new structures, new ecosystems, all brought about by the need to disrupt, causes a few questions and headaches for boardrooms, doesn't it? I mean, how do we deliver the digital transformation and still provide value back to the business, to our colleagues, customers, society at large? Well, we've got you back this year, because we're going to help you identify the mix of partners, technologies and solutions to address all of that. Up next, we are going to be talking intelligent automation, hot topic automation right now, isn't it? It's coming to the fore. A few misconceptions about what automation can do, will do, what does it mean for staff? We're going to cover all of that in just a moment. Interestingly, we know we're living in an era where we need to increasingly being forced to share data. Can we trust the data? How do we assess the quality of the data that we're using? Now, automation has been heralded as a crucial technology for the digital age, with promises of improving efficiencies, empowering employees and increasing productivity. Music to the ears of CEOs, no doubt. Yet in 2018, only 4% claimed to have scaled beyond 50 robots. Well, at Fujitsu World Tour, guests got to watch an esteemed panel, and I'm delighted to say that they've popped along to have a chat with us. Thank you so much for coming to see us. Joining me is Reddy, Head of Digital Business Solutions for Fujitsu UK and Ireland, Bache, Head Architect, RPA Centre of Excellence, Fujitsu EMEA, and Guy Kirkwood, Chief Evangelist from UiPath.
Hi.
Thank you all for coming over. I'm going to throw the question to you first, Maddie, but I'm really keen to get everyone's opinion on this. Why do you think there's hesitance with automation? Because everything I read, this is a no-brainer, isn't it?
So I think the answer lies in three parts. The first bit, I think people don't really understand how the benefits model works with automation, as to what is the cost of automation versus what is the benefit you can derive at individual project level and at enterprise scale. The second thing is there's complexity in deploying automation at an enterprise scale. The issues that we commonly hear about is about security. It's about trusting the technology and making sure that it does what it promises without contravening GDPR and other issues. And then the next issue is fear. Fear that this technology will replace human beings, that this is potentially a way of looking at operational cost reductions rather than pure productivity improvements. So these are the three things that are stopping organizations right now from scale adoption.
Is that the same through your lens?
I think it's interesting that you mentioned about society, because what we found over the last, we've only been running for about 4 years, but up to about 18 months, 2 years ago, all of the business cases were predicated on job cuts, on headcount reduction, on cost out. But what organisations have found that once they put automation in, they found that the value of their people, the value of their human capital is actually much higher than they thought it was. So we're finding now that the business cases are changing. So it's now based on employee engagement, removing the boring, mundane, repetitive work that people have to do to allow them to do much more customer-centric, customer-focused type work. And I think ultimately, over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see organisations not measure themselves by how they run themselves internally, but their customer intimacy, how they base their relationship with their customers. And if you look at Uber and Amazon, there's a reason that those organisations and the words have become verbs. No one wants to get Ubered. And the role of Fujitsu in this is helping their organisations, their clients, through that digital transformation journey of which RPA is a part.
Some of that hesitance come from a lack of understanding, do we think?
Yes and no. And I think to add to this, and also seeing that I come from the technical part of it, there are so many different ways of doing automations, and previously there's been different automations for different applications, and historically companies have been doing automations within the applications themselves. There hasn't really been a set of tools that would enable the companies and the customers to do the automation in a single uniform way through a single pane of glass. Now with the advent of RPA, that's evolved, so you can actually use just one single tool to do the automation. But it takes time for this to sink in with the customers. It just takes time to filter in there and get the knowledge within both the IT organizations, but also in the business organizations, making them realize that doing automations is not as complex anymore as it used to be.
Yeah, I think the best way of describing it is actually, it's one of our competitors, a chap called Adam Devine, who was the CMO for WorkFusion. He described it as the different technologies that organizations have, so BPM, ERP, CRM, and so on. They're never going to come together in one blob in the middle, but they're coming very slightly closer together. And you think of it like a Venn diagram, and it's the overlap is where the RPA, automation, and AI comes in, because it acts as the bridge, it acts as the glue holding those things together, and looking through that pane of glass, as Jan mentioned.
When are we going to get to a point when businesses scale? I mean, that stats at the top of the segment, only 4% with 50 plus robots. There's obviously a sensible story to automation, profitability impact, efficiency impact that it will and can deliver. How and when are we going to see this scale?
So we already seen that. So 4% was statistic in 2018. That statistic is accelerating quite considerably every year. This is new technology, the adoption is very fast, and so that's already happening. And this year in the market, we are starting to see the government step in at scale with a lot of RFPs in the market, procuring these kind of services and market testing various ideas. So we can see that, when a big buyer like the government moves, that scale will increase quite quickly in various services. So adoption itself is accelerating. It's not a static 4%. That 4% will be 8% this year. In general terms, the RPA market, the growth projections for RPA market are very high. The CAGR is about 33% a year-on-year growth.
Okay.
So by 2025, you'll see that RPA is actually embedded as a core technology. It'll be taken for granted. So we can already see the path to that evolution.
I'm keen to understand a bit about Fujitsu and UiPath working together within the process. Give us an overview of the partnership between the two organisations.
UiPath can only be successful by working through partners like Fujitsu. We have grown significantly over the last 3 years. I mean, we recruited 1,000 people in the last 100 days of last year. But we can only scale linearly if we hire loads of people. Whereas we can scale exponentially, which is what we've seen. We grew by 600% last year as a result of working with Fujitsu and other partners, because they are doing the implementation. The reason that Fujitsu want to work with us is because it's that digital transformation journey. If all of your customers are going through that journey, robotic process automation and the AI tools help that process. And so I see the value of the Fujitsu UiPath relationship as being synergistic. And that means it's very successful for Fujitsu's customers. And if they're successful, then we're successful.
What are we seeing through the lens of Fujitsu?
I think, and it's a very good point that Guy makes there, what we're seeing here is that UiPath is a fantastic enabler of the tools, where we, Fujitsu, we provide the services. So we are able to provide all of the underlying services which actually is required in order to run RPA. And that is sometimes a little bit neglected when we talk about RPA with the customers. That there's many times this great focus only on the tool itself, and even sometimes just a particular business process. People tend to forget that there is a huge underlying set of services that is required just to get it up and running, but also very much to get it scalable and get it scaling. And I'm not just talking about infrastructure services here. I'm talking about governance services. I'm talking about change management services. I'm talking about commercial services, license management services, a whole plethora of different services actually required to be successful with this technology. So I think that it's a great partnership because you provide the tools and we can provide the surrounding services.
Sounds like a match made in heaven. I'm going to preempt some of the trolling questions we always get around automation. This isn't about taking jobs away, is it?
No, it isn't. It is about adding an incremental net cash flow to our customers' businesses. It is about improving productivity. It is about improving the experience that an employee has in using the technology within a firm. It is about reducing the number of process steps in getting to a point where you can get the technology to work for you better. It is a lot about releasing the time of the employee from the mundane tasks they do every day to focus on value-added tasks. So it is not about FTE reduction. It is very much about improving productivity.
The magic word there was time. So the currency of automation has now changed from money to time. It's time back to the business. So once you've automated a task, that doesn't mean that those people are now made redundant. What it means is they're then released to then do higher value work. So in one example, one of the big four audit companies, they've automated 45% of their entire audit practice using a combination of both AI and RPA tools run by UiPath. As a result of that, the first and second years, they're coming out of university that do that crappy stuff, the stuff that first and second years always do. They can move immediately onto higher value work and be built up with a higher level. And it's the same with Fujitsu. And I think the critical thing here is around education. So education for individuals within organizations is really critical, but it's also making sure, and we heard a session earlier today about education for students and even for school children on the value of automation as they come into work is something that is absolutely critical to the success of the market as a whole.
So to add another example to that, so think about the government services and the backlog of complaints, the backlog of cases that they have to deal with, which is piling on a regular basis. And to be able to release employee time to deal with that backlog is going to be amazing, because currently we are talking about, 20,000 more police officers on the streets. If you can get them away from the mundane activities of the day-to-day documentation they have to do, you possibly could do a lot more with much less incremental police officers. So because you can see that as the economy grows, you're going to need more people to do the same level of jobs. So unless we improve the productivity in the way we do the jobs, you'll need more and more people who actually don't exist right now. The country is full employment. We are at 4% unemployment, which is effectively full employment. So if you wanted 20,000 more police officers, where are you going to get them from? So we have to improve the productivity for the existing police officers so we can do a lot more cases with less number of people.
One of our customers described it best as the chief executive of the company. He said, since we put in automation, the mood music of our organisation has changed.
Yeah.
We now measure our service in terms of compliments rather than complaints. So the value for public sector in terms of citizen-centric services is just enormous.
Yes.
Fascinating stuff. Final question. I'm mindful you've got to get away to an appointment, so I'm going to come to you first, Jan, but I'd be keen to get all of your comments on this. There'll be a lot of boardrooms looking at this thinking, wow, making a lot of sense, we've got to discuss this internally. If you had one message for C-suite who are considering automation, what would it be?
I would say that this is the best digital enabler for change, and it is a required step forward. Absolutely.
What he said. Simple.
What do you think, Madhavi?
So my view is that if the C-suite wants to increase and improve their net cash flow positions, technologies like RPA combined with artificial intelligence is absolutely essential to be introduced in their stack to derive those kind of benefits. So we are looking at net cash flow improvements of 6% year on year using these kind of technologies. And that is just the kind of a benefit you cannot walk away from at this point.
The Economist came out with a report that was published last week, and they interviewed 502 C-suite executives around the world, and 51% are now scaling their RPA from those 502. Yeah. So there's a book written by Geoffrey Moore called Crossing the Chasm, and early adopters move into, before we get to the mainstream, there is a gap, that chasm you need to cross. RPA has crossed that chasm, so if you're not thinking about implementing automation, then you are now a laggard.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you so much for coming. Right. I know there's going to be a ton of questions relating to that sage advice you've just heard. If you want to continue the conversation with any of our guests, drop us a note on social. We will make the introduction for you so you can continue the conversation offline. Staying online, there is still plenty more insight coming out of Fujitsu World Tour. By the time we finish later, we'd have brought you interviews around AI, blockchain, security, quantum, multi-cloud, innovation, operational excellence, workplace, a trusted future, retail, the connected world, public sector, transport, and financial services, no less. As you can probably tell from the background noise, it's quite busy here this year. Stay with us, plenty more insights to come. Thanks for watching.